Evelyn's heartbeat was pounding in her ears, and her breath came in ragged gasps. As she willed her feet to move faster down the trail, she could barely hear the crashing of Damien's feet in the dry leaves behind her, but she knew he was gaining on her. Cold fear gripped her heart as she felt her foot catch on a root, and she tumbled forward, palms scraping against the gravel trail. She scrambled to her feet and kept running, sparing a glance over her shoulder where Damien grunted and cursed only a few yards behind. She flew around a bend in the trail and stopped short when she noticed a massive, dark shape blocking her escape. The erratic beating of her heart slowed to a halt as the shape in front of her coalesced into a creature who lifted its massive furry head and leveled its gaze at her. What's up, guys? Iceman here. So what you're about to witness is one of the most wretched bear attacks that I've told on this channel yet. And what happens to this girl is horrifying. But first off, I'd like to thank you all for your support on this channel. And if you will, like this video, subscribe to the page, and paw that bell so you're notified next time I post a video. And if you want to support me further, you can become a channel member or a patron. Links in the description below. And I'm not a bot, so like this video for the sake of humanity. And let's get into this chilling tale. It was a hideous thing that happened to Evelyn on that fateful, evil day. A disturbing occurrence, the way Damien convinced the naive 18-year-old to join him on a day hike only a few hours after they met. She was an hour from finishing her shift at the local hardware store when Damien walked in. Charming, the man had caught her off guard when he asked her for her number across the checkout counter. She was instantly enthralled. Evelyn was a beautiful young woman, inside and out. Her light olive skin made Damien's heart skip a beat as he imagined what he wanted to do to the seemingly untainted female. They met later that day, a local park at the entrance of the Manistee National Forest in Michigan. Damien grinned as he watched her get out of her Subaru, her long, slender legs looking as unscathed by the world as the rest of her. A delicate, pointed nose that reminded him of a forest fairy. And then, the moment that she innocently looked over at him with a reserved but friendly smile, that was the instant he knew there was no going back. Evelyn frantically ran through the unforgiving forest. She suddenly realized her earlier gut instinct had been correct when it had urged her not to meet up with this strange man, whom she had met so suddenly, so spontaneously. She stopped to catch her breath, leaning against a large spruce tree in the middle of the darkening forest. She looked down to her wrist and noticed it was still bleeding, and it dawned on her how impossible it was that she escaped the grasp of Damien. Maybe he let her go. Maybe he changed his mind. She's never been touched like that before by a man, aside from a short fling she had in high school, where Tommy the football star had her behind the bleachers and made aggressive gestures toward her, grabbing and squeezing her butt without her consent, as he rigorously kissed her and held her against his body. The moment he began skidding his hand down the back of her shorts, she pulled away, and he instantly apologized and went into regret mode. But this was something different. Damien was older, perhaps 30, and he wouldn't let go upon request. She had been shocked by his strength and insistence, how he grabbed her, refusing to let her go. His fingernails dug into her wrist, and she pulled away and yanked. The man's eyes grew emboldened as he realized the young girl's vulnerability, the privacy they had in the woods, the opportunity of a lifetime. Black bears are abundant through Manistee, a medium-sized bear endemic to North America. Typically, adults are 3 feet tall at the shoulder, and their length from nose to tail is about 75 inches. All bears, including black bears, are sexually dimorphic, meaning adult males are much larger than adult females. A large male black bear can exceed 600 pounds in weight, while females seldom exceed 200 pounds. The sound of Damien stumbling through the forest, searching for Evelyn sent chills down her spine. He was closing in on her location, and she knew she had to get away. She clutched her injured wrist tightly and got back on the trail, making her way toward the parking lot, which was still about 1.5 miles away. Thoughts rushed through her mind as she raced toward Hope. What was he going to do to her? Was he a serial killer? Had he done this before? She's never been grabbed so hard in her life. But such things are now a distant memory. She had to get out of there. "Evelyn! Evelyn!" shouted the eerily unfamiliar voice as it dawned closer and closer through the thicket. She turned down the trail in the opposite direction, and as she curved the bend, something horrifying lay waiting. The corner of her eye caught a large black creature standing between her and the way out. She could hear the loud voice of Damien calling to her, the voice getting more stern and frantic, more demanding. She turned and looked to the creature, now startled by the sight of the young, terrified female. It quickly stood up on its hind legs and veered around the closest tree, not letting its gaze lose sight of the mysterious girl. Damien came crashing down the trail. "Get over here, you bitch!" he shouted with a fierce voice as he noticed the young woman on the trail in front of him. She looked at Damien and saw the murderer in his eyes, the hatred, the fear. Then she looked to the bear, its eyes soulless, but the creature seemed startled, almost timid over the unfamiliar scene. Evelyn chose, and she chose the bear. She sprinted, attempting to squeeze between the bear and the tightly packed trail, Damien gaining ground on her quickly. "Stay the hell away from that thing," he deceptively sneered. She didn't listen. She edged past the terrified animal, and just as she passed it, catching a gust of its musky-smelling odor, it caught her by the rib. She twirled and stumbled to the hard ground. Its claws dug deep into her side, and in the same moment, the bear was on top of her. It tore into her feeble body, slicing gaping wounds in her smooth, white-as-snow skin. She rolled on her back and covered her face with her forearms as the bear dug into her chest and clenched its jaws around her hand. Damien stopped in his tracks, witnessing the horrifying scene. He began cursing and wallowing, seemingly shocked by the unsettling horror in front of him. The bear was attacking as though defensively, looking up to Damien, swaying its head, and then digging into the girl more. Damien grabbed a large stick and approached the animal from behind, but like a swift spider, it shifted its position on a dime, and still atop the helpless female, was now facing Damien, with its head down, still focusing on the girl. Evelyn gasped and moaned, and looked up to Damien's shocked but soulless eyes. Her big, beady brown eyes were filled with despair, her long, thick brown hair bloodied and sticking to her face. And then, without warning, Damien held back his leg and kicked her head as hard as he could, as if it were a soccer ball. The momentum from the kick shot her head back, jolting her spine, and her face collapsed then, back into the dirt. The kick was so hard that it lightly crushed Damien's toes, even through his thick work boots. The bear buckled down on her when he kicked the woman, as if it were then possessing its kill, as if it went from a victim to an offender in that very moment. Something from the kick to the girl's head jostled the creature, strumming its primitive instincts to take what was its, and what began as a defensive mauling turned into a predatory attack of emboldened possession and sheer will to survive and eat. Damien slowly backed away from the grotesque scene, almost a smile on his face, as he watched the animal eat the girl while she was still alive. The moans became more and more faint as he backed away. Her fighting and resisting ceased, and she lay there with the bear atop her, her head turned toward Damien. The bear buckled down again and warned Damien not to come near it as it hissed and snarled before burying its face into the victim's lightly dressed torso, chewing and shredding like a dog would to a possum. The sounds of her bones crunching filled the early, eerie night. The man she met earlier that day at the hardware store smiled as he vanished back into the woods, covering up the tracks with intent of returning to the scene later. Evelyn witnessed the man disappear into the night as the creature began having its fill of her. The resentment, the regret, the despair. The pain was gone. It was now just numbness and tiredness. She was unable to move, and her consciousness began to fade.